You trust Tua down in Miami if you're a Dolphins fan this morning?
I think you have no choice but to give him a chance. The problem last year is the other two quarterbacks taken in the top 6 along with Tua performed extremely well. And Dolphins fans immediately get very salty when you point out that the Dolphins took Tua when Justin Herbert was still on the board and he ended up being the offensive rookie of the year. So it makes Tua's 2020 season seem like a failure in comparison. And then there's the fact that he got benched on multiple occasions. And then there's the fact that he admitted earlier this offseason he didn't know the offense well enough, which explains why they would pull him in crunch time of a close game because Fitzpatrick did. But why didn't he know the offense better? Why wasn't he comfortable with the audibles and the adjustments and everything else that he needed to do? So the pressure is on him and the team this year. The Dolphins generally are trending in the right direction. I still don't completely rule out a Deshaun Watson trade, although I think it's highly unlikely at this point. But I think they'll give Tua this year, and if he doesn't make a big jump this year, I think they're back in the market next year for a quarterback.
Mike, this is something I never thought I would say in my entire life, but I'm going to say it. The depth at quarterback for the Bears fascinates me.
When you got Nick Foles buried at the bottom of the depth chart, and now maybe they can unload him onto the Colts for a draft pick, it really is amazing. They just need one of those guys to come in and play at a high level, which they haven't had since Jay Cutler, arguably, Sid Luckman, possibly.
Great Sid Luckman reference on the show. Did not see that in the rundown heading into Monday here on Rich Eisen. Ben Lyons joined by Mike Florio right now. And you mentioned Nick Foles. Is that the best course of action you think for the Colts as they try to rectify this disaster now at the quarterback position for them?
I think it'll be the cheapest and the simplest way out of this. The problem is this range of potential return from Carson Wentz, 5 to 12 weeks. When have we had a spread that big? 5 to 12 weeks. What the hell? What has to happen for it to be 5, and what has to go wrong for it to be 12? But they like Jacob Eason. There have been articles throughout the offseason about how much they like him. Of course, that's kind of how the game goes. You want to pump up your young guys that you hope become something in the future. Foles makes a ton of sense. I don't know how Wentz would feel about reuniting with Foles, but I think Frank Reich could make it work if he had to. And Foles coming in there, and Foles said today he's heard the trade chatter. He doesn't want to go anywhere where he doesn't know anyone, and I think Indianapolis is where he would most want to go if that's how it were to play out. And there aren't a lot of options at this point. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo's floating around out there, and I don't think the Colts would pay him $25 million, but if there was some sort of a deal that would involve a trade and a reduction in his contract, that could be a possibility. But if they would make that kind of move, that would tell me it's 12 weeks or more that Carson Wentz is going to be out.
Mike, over the weekend I saw on Instagram that Odell Beckham Jr. bought $1.8 million worth of diamonds for his teeth. What's the most amount of money you've ever spent on something to look more handsome? And also, what's his role going to be in Cleveland moving forward? Haven't seen too much of OBJ on the field with Baker Mayfield.
I have spent nothing. It's a hopeless case, right? There's nothing I can do. I don't even have a watch right now. I have an Apple Watch somewhere around here that I lost track of. So I'm very minimalist in that regard. As it relates to OBJ, I think that would be his best approach. Assimilate into the offense. Don't be a focal point. Stop being the guy who constantly talks about how much he wants the football. I think that was a major distraction for the offense in 2019 when they were trying to settle into a groove in Baker Mayfield's career. And anytime you've got that one guy who is a receiver who is crowing constantly about getting the ball, and it's an issue that's discussed in press conferences, and there's this genuine belief by the receiver that the more I get the ball, the more likely we are to win, I think that makes it so much harder for the quarterback because he stares down that receiver a little bit longer, waiting for him to get open. Maybe he throws it into coverage. If he isn't the open man, the best offense is the one where you just go through your reads, 1, 2, 3, 4, and maybe 5 if it goes that deep. And you just throw it to the guy who's open, and you don't worry about who's getting the ball, how many times he's getting the ball. You just throw it to the open guy, and that's going to be the key this year for Beckham. Don't talk about how often you're getting the ball. Just be one of the guys. If you're open and your number's up in the progression, then you're going to get the football.
Mike, that is such a challenging ask of Odell Beckham Jr. Hey, Odell, can you just blend in and be one of the guys? He just spent $2 million on diamonds for his teeth. How's he going to be one of the guys?
Well, and here's the balance. And I think we saw some of this last year. Remember he had that big game against the Cowboys not long before the torn ACL where he was doing it all. He was running the ball. He was making the catches, run after the catch. there are ways you can construct an offense to get the ball in his hands without relying upon him to be open. Because what defenses will do, if they know you're going to force the ball to Odell Beckham Jr. early to get him into the game and to get the offense off on the right track, they're going to blanket him so he can't get the ball. But you use screen passes, you use reverses, you put him in the backfield. There are ways to get him the ball where he doesn't have to get open, where he can be part of the offense and he can feel like he's part of things. They just really need to avoid a situation where there's extra pressure on Mayfield to get the ball to Beckham on plays when getting the ball to Beckham isn't the right move to make.
Mike Florio joins us right now from Pro Football Talk. So obviously he talks a lot about football. But what is the one story, the one player, the one team that us as football fans are just not talking enough about, you think, here in August?
Well, I can't say Aaron Rodgers, although we really have stopped talking about that over the course of the last week ever since he showed up. I think we need to be paying a close amount of attention to Pittsburgh and what's going to go on there this year. I've said for months now that I think both the Steelers and Ben Roethlisberger are going to regret this one more year, and I think there was a lot of optimism that got maybe a little unrestrained in the building between their playoff loss to the Browns and the moment they worked out a deal to bring back Roethlisberger for one more year. I just think they weren't happy with their other alternatives, and they didn't see a path to getting a competent replacement. And I really do think with him now 39 years old and showing signs of breaking down, he's had issues with his knees. He had the elbow thing a couple of years ago. Their offensive line has had so much turnover. There's a chance, and I regard Mike Tomlin as one of the best coaches in the NFL, and he can maybe find a way to make chicken salad out of this, but I think there's a chance it just all falls apart for the Steelers this year, and when we get to Thanksgiving, both the team and Roethlisberger are going to be saying, at least privately, why did we do this? And I think it puts them in play for Aaron Rodgers next year, potentially, once we fire up that engine again in the offseason.
Got Brockman all excited over there. Seeing a lot of different facial movements.
No,
from Brockman,
I
the
totally,
idea of Aaron Rodgers
agree
in
with
Pittsburgh.
you. No, also just with Ben, Mike, I think this season's going to be a disaster for them. I mean, they didn't address really any of their offensive line needs, especially in the draft. Like, what are they going to do?
Well, and to have so many guys gone, that whole David DeCastro thing that kind of dropped out of the blue, that he's got chronic ankle problems and they cut him. I mean, that was the one guy they were counting on coming back.
Right.
You've got Alejandro Villanueva gone. You've got DeCastro gone. Marquise Pouncey retired. Kevin Filer signed with the Chargers as a free agent. I mean, 4 out of 5 starters on the offensive line are gone. And Big Cat and I got into this argument on PFT Live a few weeks back where he said, well, they weren't very good, so they won't miss them. But that's a hell of a stretch because the guys who were starters were the best they had. And now they're going to start jamming in other guys and hope it works. And it's a leap of faith that may not be justified.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.